Hey everyone, quick plug right up front because I've got something cool for you. Of course, I want to make sure I respect your time, so feel free to skip to this timestamp if you're not interested in extra content. For those of you who stuck around, thank you. I will make this quick. I've just started making a sort of second thought after dark companion video thing for each video we put up here on YouTube. So far, I've got one for the Red Scare episode and the car episode you're about to watch. Each episode has a segment where I chat with our producer about all the things we wanted to include in the script, but we couldn't, whether because of time constraints or other reasons, as well as a little rant about the topic by yours truly. They are a lot of fun to make, and I really think you'll enjoy them. These are all exclusive to Means TV, so if you're already a Means subscriber, you can go watch right now. If you're not a subscriber yet, I've got a little treat for you. Anyone who signs up using my link can get either their first month or their first year 20% off, depending on if you go for the monthly or annual plan. As an added bonus for people who already support the channel on Patreon, all patrons, regardless of pledge amount, can get 50% off their first year with the annual subscription. That is the best deal Means TV has ever offered, and it's because I love you all so much. But honestly, I do really appreciate all the support, especially from our wonderful patrons, so I wanted to find a way to show that appreciation. If you're not familiar with Means, it's a worker-owned cooperative and explicitly anti-capitalist streaming service. You can find everything from my videos to original series like Means Morning News to feature-length documentaries like Abby Martin's Gaza Fights for Freedom, with more amazing content being added every day. I've been working behind the scenes to help turn Means TV into a place that's both worthwhile for viewers, as well as offering financial security for socialist creators in an increasingly reactionary political landscape. We've got an amazing roster of creators, and there are a bunch more exciting ones coming soon, so stay tuned for that. All of us at Means are trying really hard to build an alternative media ecosystem that is ideologically dedicated to sharing left-wing perspectives. With Means TV, we're able to say things the way they are. No pulling punches, no beating around the bush to trick the all-seeing eye of the algorithm. Means gives us the freedom to make the content we really want to make and say the things we really want to say. Means TV is entirely grassroots funded, and it always will be. So, if you'd like to support the channel, and the only socialist streaming co-op around, you can snag a big discount by using my link in the description, or if you're a Second Thought patron, you can claim your discount on our Patreon page. And now, on with the show.
Hang on!
Look, car companies just want some of us to die. Earlier this year, the Trump admin quietly pushed back the enforcement of the new car assessment program. You probably haven't heard of it, but the NCAP sets vehicle safety ratings so that car makers can't build death traps, or at least can't sell them. Now, the last update to the NCAP, passed right at the end of Biden's term, was significant because it added new requirements like automatic braking on trucks in an emergency and tech to prevent kids from dying in a hot car. Good, sensible, just life-saving stuff, really, that places like the EU already include in their NCAPs and that automakers were given over a year to add to their US models. Recently, Trump delayed implementation of those rules for one extra year. But with this admin, that kind of move often just means forever. Car makers, trucking companies, they pour millions into lobbying to get these sorts of results. It's what makes ground transportation the 6th most lobbied sector in the US. And if that wasn't enough, transportation happens to be a particularly corrupt part of our government. At least 32 people at the DOT have direct industry ties, including the Transportation Secretary himself, who was a lobbyist working on behalf of transportation companies right up until Trump appointed him. Which is why that NCAP, hot car, and emergency brakes thing is, unfortunately, just an appetizer I threw at the top of this meal of a video. Another rule, one that adds a barrier on the bottom of trucks so a car can't slide underneath and get crushed, something that happens hundreds of times a year and is almost always fatal, was also pushed back under Trump's DOT. As was another regulation to make sure cars had seatbelt reminders. Yes, they're annoying, but so is dying. And if you move from cars and trucks to include the rest of the transportation industry, this DOT has also taken away things like limits on subway and bus drivers' hours, which reduced how often they fell asleep at the wheel. They've also pushed back on adding an extra cockpit barrier on planes to prevent hijackings. They've reduced the safety requirements for motorcycle helmets because why not? Loosened regulation on trains carrying dangerous cargo, and according to an investigation by ProPublica, made around 30 other regulatory moves that, conservatively, threaten 1,000 lives and 40,000 injuries a year, according to the DOT's own estimates. All of that is preparing the next few years to go pretty horribly for tens of thousands of us. And if that wasn't enough, basic government stuff like vehicle safety inspections have also gone way down since Trump took office, meaning even the rules that stayed on the books aren't really being enforced either. For a country that's already way ahead of the pack on motor vehicle deaths, this is terrifying. We are being sacrificed for corporate convenience, for fun and profit. After all, these changes are all part of Trump's Unleashing Prosperity Through Deregulation project, a project that has made it the official government policy that profit for the country's billionaires is a bigger priority than safety for the country's commuters. And to get here, all auto manufacturers had to do was ask. Here, when it pushed back the NCAP, for example, the DOT explicitly credited car companies simply complaining as their justification for deregulating our lives away. And, just for kicks, the scale of deregulation we're talking about here is so dramatic that it's even catching libertarians off guard. There are few such terrible omens. Unfortunately, we don't have much of a choice here but to drive our cars on the highway next to trucks so we can get to our home near the tracks. If the cars, the trucks, and the trains are all more dangerous, there aren't a ton of alternatives left. Actually, somehow, that's an understatement. Almost everyone in the US needs and has at least one car. Most of us who drive don't have a choice. We don't have or use public transit basically at all. The Trump admin is actively trying to cut what little funding does go to public transportation. And our love for the automobile runs so deep that we are the only country that's pioneered an entire car-based media ecosystem, birthing the ever-iconic multicam hardstyle in my car burger temp review video.
Could I get 4 quarter pounders with cheese, or double quarter pounders with cheese, and a medium Diet Coke?
All right, and what else?
That's all I need.
Medium Diet Coke with 4 double quarters. That is going to be $31.19. Would you like to round up for the kids?
No, that's fine.
You can pull out the next one. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Joe, for that. But how the hell did this happen? This, car manufacturers telling the government how many deaths are okay and none of us having a choice. How did we become car country? We should go back and do a little history.
Come on now. I want you to meet a great new star.
Isn't that a beautiful sight?
See Studebaker 57 now.
Look how easily wheels turn.
No matter where you're going, getting there is a real treat when you drive Chevrolet.
Back in the early 20th century, commuting was a very different story. Shocking as it might be, most major cities in the US used to have pretty decent public transit. Atlanta, LA, Detroit, Buffalo, Raleigh, and many, many more had thriving and, for their time, expansive trolley systems for America's commuters. All told, the US had 17,000 miles of streetcar tracks. If you worked in a medium-sized metro and up, you probably relied on public transit to get to and from work. Compare that to today, a place like Raleigh has an eye-popping 1.1% public transit ridership, which sadly isn't uncommon. For anywhere other than New York and Chicago, basically, it's a car or nothing. When just 100 years ago, for 5 cents a ride, less than $1 today, you had a way to get around conveniently in just about any city. But then cars happened. Now, the way this story is usually told goes something like this. Henry Ford was a genius. His big, craggly brain invented the assembly line, decent pay, and cheap cars. In so doing, Ford transformed American society overnight. Millions of people one day woke up, bought a Model T for 2 pennies and a raspberry, and realized that having a little house on wheels was more convenient and fun than slumming it on the rails. And what fun, it's even built with us hand crankers in mind.
All right, we crank it, okay. You kind of have to, I'll have to hold the choke while you crank it. All right, well, okay.
Everybody agreed, so everything changed, so it's no one's fault that we live in car world. The market spoke. Cars are just better. Streetcars shut down, we moved on, here we are. The US was never the same. That story is wrong. But so is this next one. Between 1938 and 1950, car manufacturers and oil industry players like General Motors, Standard Oil, and Firestone Tire didn't want streetcars. They wanted cars. The car was increasingly popular, but unfortunately, so was public transit. So these increasingly powerful companies realized that to win, they'd need to cut out their competition entirely and monopolize commuting to transform it into a fossil-first industry. This wasn't an easy project with cheap, reliable, and popular public transit available everywhere. So over the course of 2 decades, this group of fossil fuel companies bought up just about every light rail system throughout the country and shut it down. Every streetcar system in 25 major cities and 100 companies in California alone snatched up by Shell Corps and replaced with buses and the personal auto. And they succeeded. Public transit became a stringy network of bus lines that suck, so might as well get a car. Unfortunately for them, these companies were found guilty of conspiracy and forced to pay tiny fines. But no big deal. They survived that easily. Streetcars shut down, we moved on, here we are. The US was never the same. That is also wrong. Cars won, yes, but not thanks to unsavory business practices. The monopoly conspiracy did happen, but historians mostly agree it was ultimately just a small footnote at the end of an already struggling streetcar industry. Cars ruined streetcars, but not by buying them out. No, cars won by remaking the very fabric of American society and law. The car industry is one of the most invisibly subsidized industries in the US. Take parking, for example. In cities like Houston, Texas, there's about 30 parking spots per resident. And across the US, 8 spots per car. That's too much parking. A third of the land in some cities before you even start counting the pavement. And according to Donald Shoup in this book, that's not driven by consumer demand or need. It's decided by legal mandate. In most major cities, employers are required by law to provide parking spaces for their employees. Like extra lanes on the highway, extra parking spots create induced demand for cars, as do zoning laws. Single-family only zoning is a reality in much of the US. To make things simple, there are places in this country where you literally can't build anything but a house for a nuclear family as a developer, and where the people living there can't turn a big useless house into apartments for multiple families. This was obviously a big racism thing, and for auto companies, it means everyone lives in a big, too expensive house far away from everyone, which makes public transit less efficient, which makes having a car a necessity. And the tax code in most of the country further incentivizes this. The mortgage interest tax deduction, for example, when combined with the zoning laws and the insane costs of housing, have created areas of the country where most people's cheapest, if not only option, is that big expensive house that's only accessible by car. So much of your taxes get cut by that cheap loan you got for your big house that renting doesn't make sense. It's why every city is surrounded by that gross-looking sprawl that goes on for miles, and why getting to work usually means sitting in traffic for over an hour. Why it feels like your entire existence is shuttling yourself from one isolated bubble to another with soulless nothing all around. In places like San Francisco, for example, that's going to end up being over 100 24-hour days of your life stuck in gridlock. And if you don't have a car, but you still pay taxes, you effectively subsidize those who do. Another side effect of our car-first system is that roads, public lots, all the indirect costs that come with driving, they're not car owners' sole responsibility. In Massachusetts, for example, car owners pay for less than half of the state's car and truck budget directly. In other words, per year, whether they own a car or not, the average Massachusetts person and their family has to pay 14 grand. That is a budget in the tens of billions of dollars a year, and is significantly more expensive than a public transit alternative. But we should come back to how we started this video. Safety. It's not just that laws are being taken out when they're a slight inconvenience for automakers. When it comes to cars, our entire legal approach is built from the assumption that car companies and drivers can do no wrong. In the US, car regulations are designed around the safety of a car's occupants. Just about everywhere else, safety regulations begin with mitigating harm to pedestrians. But here, Your Cybertruck clears inspection as long as you make it out alive driving through that playground. This, too, is exacerbated by some other parts of the legal system. Courts have a habit of treating harm caused by drivers differently than all other forms of harm. Quote, "The standard of liability that applies to car crashes, ordinary negligence, establishes low expectations of how safe a driver must be. Courts have held that a higher standard, strict liability, which forces more careful risk-taking, does not apply to driving. And this gets reflected in how the law is enforced. In New York," here's another quote, "even in the most serious cases, the majority of hit-and-run drivers see no consequences. In 2017, only 24 of the 62 hit-and-runs that resulted in critical injury or death led to arrest. And even when the government has the numbers to prove that cars are to blame, it's pedestrians who get scolded for not paying attention or jaywalking, a term literally invented by the car industry when their products started killing too many people in the 1920s. Rather than force cars to be equipped with safety measures, pedestrians were shamed for causing their own deaths. There's only jaywalking, no jay-driving, not in car country." Like so much of American life, peeking under the hood of one thing like this only proves how little we matter. Just like in the healthcare industry or the food industry, where federal cuts means fewer hospitals and more E. coli, listeria, and salmonella, the priority is and always will be American business. We don't matter. Not to billion-dollar industries, not to their army of lobbyists, not to their hand-picked regulators or their libertarian cheerleaders. Would we let this many people die if it were up to us? I don't think so. But with capitalists in the driver's seat, it's not up to us. We don't get to hold the keys. Not in car country.